taking a little bit of a break from carving on the mantel to make some plinth blocks. This is an original, I think they're about 5.5, 5 5/8 plinth block. These are handmade. These are the original age of the house, 1892, I think. She sent a whole bunch of blanks. I think there's 12 or 15 blanks over there to make these. There's several processes in this. The first is the turning. So the turning in the middle is just all the way from edge to edge, but in the middle of that I've got some drillings and some little hand cut. They're not really carved. They're put in there with a cutting wheel. I don't know how they did it originally, but I'm pretty sure it was a wheel. I can tell the wheel, the look of it. It wasn't cut with a carving tool. It was some sort of a wheel. Anyway, I'm in the turning process of it right now. I made a jig to I extended my face plate and I just put a piece of rock maple on there just for stability and the weight of it, and then I've screwed this from the back to these blanks. I'm just going to go through the process of doing a little turning. So mainly the camera will be focused on the turning portion of it. I'll explain as I go what I'm doing. Just like with stock making and needing a center line, the first thing you've got to do with the turning is establish a center point. So just turn it on, put your pencil on it, you'll get a ring. And that little ring in the middle is your center. So the first thing I want to mark is my outside diameter from edge to edge. It is 3 15/16. Alright, now I've got a mark that's half of 3 15/16. I put a little mark right there. Just put your pencil on that mark and turn the machine on. It'll make a circle. Just a light circle. And you can check to make sure that it's exactly the same, exactly the line you need it. I also have a caliper that's set to that same. For just a quick reference, I can check that. I'm going to go straight in. I use old files for tools, and most of the time they're double-ended, so it cuts on both ends. I know this is not OSHA approved, but hey, it's just what I do. All right, now I'm gonna put a depth. I'm gonna check the depth of this groove going in from the outer edge of this block. I need to go down just ever so slightly. I'm going to need to go in just a touch deeper. In the middle of this thing is a round button, but from here, from this outer edge down to that button is about 1/8 of an inch deep. This is deeper than this. So the first thing I got to do is take the depth off the face of this thing all the way across. Now I'm going to use my ruler as a straight edge to go from side to side, and I have a depth gauge. This is a taper. It's a piece of hard maple, and that taper is just a taper. But where that line meets the edge of that ruler is my depth, and right now I'm not deep enough. This is like a feeler gauge. Mechanics used to use something called a feeler gauge. Now that when that bottoms out and it's right there at that line, I'm at correct depth. Now the diameter of that button is at these points of this divider, and it's about, I don't know, 7/8 or something like that, but I can make a mark there and then cut into it. And I'll check it here in a second. Now this is the original one, and this is my caliper set to the bottom edge of that button, the outside edge. The one I've made is about 1/8 of an inch too big, so I'll size it down. That button is round. Now I have another depth gauge. Can't use it right yet because this is too big. Now, when my files, like I said, they're sharp on both ends, but when they get a little bit dull, many years ago I built a lathe, into my lathe, a grinding system, and this is it. I just took a motor, mounted it back in the back, ran a belt forward to this pillow block right here. This is always set at a constant angle. I never change it. I don't want to change it. It's always the same angle. It puts a dandy bevel. It's good for a quick touch-up. When you grind a file, there's a little hook on the top of it. It's just the nature of metal to make a hook when you grind it. And that hook is a tremendous cutting edge, but when it loses that hook, then it's not as sharp, not as aggressive. It's ever so slightly too deep right there. It's close, but it's just a teeny bit deep. So my center button is good. This depth is pretty good. This ring is good. The outer diameter is good. There's a ring in the middle of this thing, or a ring on this inside edge, that is this wide. So I've got to cut that to here. Still a little bit too wide. And it is rounded over. Bit deeper here than it is here. It kind of tapers in a little bit. So my depth gauge says I'm correct depth right there. Now this is not flat from here to here. It's actually a real, it's kind of a sweeping OG, a real flat OG. But I've got it pretty well right. This is right, this is right, this is right, that's right. From there to there is right, and that's right. So basically the turning portion of this is over. Then I got to make about 15 more. The next thing I had to do was make a jig to put these drillings in there. There's two different size drill bits. This one right here is a 1/4 inch, and this is actually a 9/16, which I had to order a 9/16 Forstner bit to cut this little half moon in there. And then I built a jig on this angle, whatever that is. I just held the block in there and determined the angle, what would be a vertical drill bit drilling coming down, and then whatever that angle was. I started out at 20 degrees, but I ended up probably 16 or 17. So then I made a little platform for it to sit on an angle and the stops to keep it in place. And I practiced on a couple, and then I started making them. Now I've got a weight on the outer diameter, but this inner diameter is a quarter. So I kicked the speed up on this drill bit so it's running a little faster than it was at first, because it drills a cleaner hole. In wood, you'll get a cleaner hole with higher speed. Because the center of this drilling is the same thing as the center of this drilling, I can use the same jig, just put a different bit in it. And this one is obviously drills deeper than that one, but it's all in minor adjustment. Whereas the jig itself, holding it in the right angle, in the right position, all that stuff, I can replicate. So this is the first step, is just drill those 4 holes. When I first started trying to figure out how to reproduce this thing, these little cuts in here were problematic. I just couldn't figure out, but I could see they were round bottom. They've been made with something round and like the size of a quarter or $50. And I went to looking for a bit, trying to find something, and I couldn't find anything. And so I took a piece of steel, I drilled a hole in it, and I put this arbor on there, which is from a Dremel, a sanding drum. I took the drum off and filled the back space up with washers there, and then put the nuts back on it. And took this piece of steel and drilled I don't know what it was, 1/8 of an inch or something like that, hole in the end of it. And then I spun it and marked it with, I don't know what something to cut that. As I was spinning this, I was cutting this, and then I got it round and fairly true, and I took another little grinding thing and put me some little teeth in it. So that's how I made that thing, to cut those little slashes in there.